Hello and welcome to my latest video. Data, right? That is the thing. If you're a cyclist, right, you've got to concentrate on the data. Now, I've got a number of methods that I use, and you might learn a bit if you watch this video. First of all, you've got to have some kind of cycle computer. Now, I use a Wahoo. This is the Wahoo Element Roam, this is the Roam, but I also use the Wahoo Element Bolt, that's this one. And the reason I use two cycle computers is because that way I can gather all of the data that I need. Now, there's a few bits of data you really need to concentrate on. Now, the first one of these is called FTP, and that stands for Functional Threshold Power. And what that is, it's a measure of the amount of power that you can put out in the space of an hour-long ride. And the way you calculate it is, right, okay, you go for a ride and you measure your watts. Now, you can use an Element Roam, or you can use a Garmin, or you can use your phone, or you can use an abacus or something like that. But you measure your amount of watts, and then you have to multiply that by your weight and then divide by your age, and that gives you a number, and the number that you've got is what's called your FTP. And if it's a really good number, that means you're a great cyclist, and if it's a really bad number, that means you're a shit cyclist. My number is really good, but I'm 67, so it's different for me. My number, I think, is 265, and I achieved that by doubling my age and then dividing my weight and then multiplying it by the number of watts that I saw Pogacar do on that last climb in the Tour de France, and then dividing by 2, and that gives you your FTP. Apparently that's the best thing, and then you upload it. I use Strava, because when you upload things to Strava, you get a whole load of data, and other people can look at your data and they can compare it with yours. But the thing about Strava is I don't really like it, so I don't use it anymore, and I don't upload my data because I'm not on Strava anymore. I use this thing called Trainer Road, apparently, that everybody else uses, and you can do it indoors. Maybe you can do it outside, I'm not sure. I've tried doing it outside, but it didn't really work. But the thing you do is you go on the turbo, right, and you measure your watts, and then you put it all up on this thing called Trainer Road, and then a coach comes along and he looks at your data and he says to an email, he says, "Are you having a laugh, mate? I mean, that is shit, your data." So you've got to pay, I think it's $12.99 a month for Trainer Road or something. But I've gone in this other site now, which is called Golden Showers, and that's even better, because what you do is you get all your data from Trainer Road and from Strava and your Wahoo and your FTP and stuff like that, and you upload it onto Golden Showers, and then you get a message from somebody, usually in Russia, saying, "Oh, that's really interesting data. Here's my phone number. Why don't you give me a ring?" And they send you a few photos as well. It's not to do with cycling, but I never quite understand it. But I think it's a great site, but I don't use it anymore, because I've found out that the thing to really concentrate on, apparently according to GCN, is cadence. And cadence is the number of times that you can turn the pedals divided by your age multiplied by how far you're going. So let's say you're going out to Box Hill, which is like a 40-mile return trip for me. And if my age, which is 67, if I double that and then divide it by my FTP, I can multiply it by a Trainer Road and a Strava subscription, and that will give me my cadence. And the higher your cadence, you're the shittier cyclist. No, it's the other way around. The higher your cadence, the better cyclist you are, but the lower the cadence, the rubbish cyclist you are. But actually, I've been reading now lately in the magazines and on GCN and stuff that apparently cadence is not the thing. The thing to look at is your heart rate. So I've got this heart rate monitor which I wear around my thigh, because that's the best place to measure your heart rate, apparently. I thought it was a bit strange, but that's what it said in the instructions. And my heart rate, I think, was 167. You take your heart rate and you divide by your age, and then you multiply by your subscription to Golden Showers, and that gives you your maximum heart rate. And apparently that's the thing to do. I read somewhere that was it Greg LeMond? He had a heart rate of about 22 after he got shot, and then when he died, well, no, he hasn't died yet, but you know, all those cyclists who died, their heart rate was like 0, and that's apparently the way to go. Apparently they say that Bjorn Borg, remember, he wasn't a cyclist, of course, he was a tennis player, but his heart rate was like 18 or something when he won Wimbledon 9 times in a row, and then they took that away from him. Hang on a minute, no, that was Lance Armstrong. He had a really good heart rate, apparently. I've been trying to emulate him, but now I've been reading that it's not heart rate at all, it's VO2 max. And VO2 max, right, is about how much oxygen how much oxygen you can swallow and then expel through your nose in the course of an hour, divided by your age, multiplied by your FTP, divided by your heart rate, and multiplied by your cadence, and then you take away the number that you first thought of, and that gives you your VO2 max. Now apparently Greg LeMond, and this was while he was still alive. Now hang on, Greg LeMond is still alive. He had the greatest VO2 max of anybody ever measured, until that other guy came along. What was his name? Vinigo? No, not Vinigo. Bjarne Riis, Mr. 60% they called him, because his VO2 was like 60 apparently. But then Vinigo came along and his VO2 max was off the scale. So I've bought this scale that you can go off of, and my VO2 max apparently is really good for a man of my age. I'm 67. I don't know if I've told you that. I'm not a bad cyclist. I think my FTP is around about 265, and the watts I can do is, well, it depends on the watts I can do and who and where I'm doing it and why and who and what and when and wherefore and all those other things. But I think watts is the best thing to do. But I don't really think a Wahoo is any good anymore. I use a Garmin, or is it a Hammerhead? That was one of those things anyway. I saw it on DC Rainmaker. He did a comparison test of them all, and he said the best data to have is no data at all, because it's all a load of shit.